Willingness. Willingness is the magic. Hi, this is Arnold Mangioli for Grateful, Ready, Open, Willing. Today we're talking about willingness. Willingness leads to acceptance of ourselves, of others, of the world, of life, on life's terms. Isn't it a Buddhist belief that our suffering comes from dissatisfaction, some form or other? I'm thinking of the musical Candide, which I cast the last Broadway revival of with Hal Prince. Love. And there's that wonderful scene where they arrive in El Dorado where everything's perfect. And the people are kind of bored because everything's so perfect, And in one version of it, they say something about, the people make the laws, and Candide and his friends say, but what happens when people break the laws? And they go, why would people break the laws if the people made the laws? It's just wonderful. And then the two sheep sing at one point, each day is bright and sunny, and end with, very nice if you're a sheep. Beautifully sung by Devorah Bailey and Nan Puritz in that production. Anyway, I just think about that. I just think about that perfect satisfaction ideal, the dissatisfaction that we create for ourselves by not allowing ourselves to be in a willing state. The willingness is all. You know who used to say that to me? A wonderful director by the name of Amanda Daynard. She's awesome. One of my favorite people I've ever worked with. And those of you who have been to Northwestern University over the last several years and been with Amanda as a teacher know exactly what I'm talking about. This woman is phenomenal. She is a genius. Anyway, we worked together on several productions, like 8 or 9 over the years. And one was a really wonderful production of Peter Pan at Trinity Rep, and it was the non-musical version. It was the straight play version. And we assembled a really fantastic troupe of actors. I think it might have been one of Karen Olivo's first jobs. I'm pretty sure of that. Anyway, it was just an extraordinary piece. And she would ask in the auditions, after people read the sides they were given, she'd say, do you have a song by chance? And they'd say, looking at me, accusatorily, is that a word? Accusatorily? They would say, I was told this was the non-musical version of Peter Pan. And Amanda would say, it is. I'm wondering if you have a song. And they'd say, well, I don't have any sheet music. And she'd say, well, I don't have a piano player. I'm just asking you if you could sing a little something a cappella. And sometimes they would, and sometimes they would decline the offer. And then she'd say, great, do you have a Shakespeare monologue? And if they'd say, what is it? From Henry V. Which is it, the Hal or the Hotspur? It's the Hal. Which one, Act 3 or Act 5? Act 3. Great, go ahead. And, when actors would refuse to do that, when they would say, well, I wasn't asked to prepare that, I'm not going to do that today, she'd thank them very graciously, and then when they'd leave the room, she'd say to me, the willingness is all. And she was putting together a production. She was assembling a cast who would have to take such dramatic risks. The scene where the Lost Boys shoot down the Wendy bird. The phenomenally talented woman who played Wendy in that production, Rachel. She was on a bedpost. Sorry, not on a bedpost. She was on a platform about 30 feet in the air. And she spread her arms, like we did for openness, way out. And she fell backwards 30 feet down onto a bed. And these actors were doing such risk-taking feats. And she just, in the casting process, knew that what she needed from them most was willingness. Willingness to do the work, willingness to try stuff, willingness to say yes. And that's how we assembled such an amazing cast. The willingness is all. In life, that's a very show businessy reference I just gave you from the audition world. In life, the opposite of willingness is acting out. or avoidance. So the question becomes, can we sit in our feelings? Or can we sit in this rehearsal? Or can we sit in this show? Or can we sit in whatever it is that feels uncomfortable to us? Are we willing? There's willingness to do the thing we don't want to do, that we know is right, and that we know is good for us. There's also finding the willingness to not do the thing that we do want to do, that maybe is a lower self moment type of thing, lower self action, something that will maybe do us harm or at least not do us good. So there's different kinds of willingness. There's willingness to fail. I have a little pewter plaque in my office that reads, "What would you attempt if you knew you could not fail?" Keep it there looking at me all day long. Try to remember that. Willingness to fail, willingness to learn. That's a big one. Willingness to learn. Brian Hebert said, "The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice." My own experience with this project, I know posting a YouTube video for most of you probably seems remarkably simple, but I'm not a technology guy. And my computer often presents challenges that surprise me. Different things that don't interact with other things, Facebook Live and Safari and Chrome and Chrome Beta and Firefox, and just finding the right browser for the right element, for the right uploads. I find it challenging. This is a project that is important enough to me that I am able to find the willingness, now that I can find the time, I am able to find the willingness to overcome my technological, what I like to refer to as my technological prowess, overcome that, and just have the willingness to try, to explore, to see about putting this information and these messages out there in a positive way, because I think it's important. I think this is the new paradigm that we are rising to in the entertainment industry, in show business, in acting, in theater, in the audition world, and in our lives, and in our community, and in our world. And I think it's a really good idea to get these ideas out there and to begin bringing awareness to them. I think they're out there. I think they exist. I think that if you're listening to this, you probably somewhere inside understand the idea of willingness and have had some life experience with it, and perhaps it's resonating for you a bit. So it's not like I'm inventing these concepts, but I do feel like it's important to bring our consciousness to these concepts more now. So this venture into YouTube and Facebook Live and websites and Instagram and Twitter and all of these things that have not occupied my day-to-day life prior to this, that's a willingness. That's a miracle. The technology itself is a miracle, for which I'm so grateful. In 1918, during the Spanish flu, they didn't have any of this. They weren't listening to videos. They weren't on YouTube. These options weren't available. These are miracles, and I'm so grateful to have them. I ask myself often, is there a place for reluctance within willingness? Perhaps I would call that will-luctance. I experience in this every day with my morning workout. I call it my morning workout. It usually takes place sometime in the afternoon. I get set to start it in the morning. I set it up and I get ready and I put the DVD in and I have the exercise mat out and I'm all ready to go. And then I start working on some emails or some writing or various projects or some back and forth with directors or professionals or CSA members. Or CSA is Casting Society of America, other casting directors, people I talk to. And the next thing I know, it's afternoon. Will-luctance, willingness with a dash of reluctance. It's a practice. All of these things are a practice. Gratitude is a practice. Readiness is a practice. Openness is a practice. Willingness is a practice. It's like yoga. It's like meditation. You never get it. That's not the point. The point is not to master it. The point is to practice it. So I practice these things. I was trying to think of a show business experience, work-wise, where willingness came into play. And I actually thought of something that was not show business related particularly, But it's the one that came to mind, and I'd like to share it with you. When I was in grammar school, we had a Catholic school nun who was one of our teachers, Sister Andrew Marie, and she was a formidable Irish Catholic nun. She was tough and she was scary to a lot of kids. I kind of liked her. I can't explain it. I just thought she was kind of interesting and kind of awesome and really decent and reasonable and a wonderful person. Just my childlike sensibility of her. And what happened was when I was in 8th grade, a new program came out in the New York City school system called Math 9. And the idea was that 8th grade students could be taught 9th grade algebra from this series of television shows on the ITV network, which was the in-school network at the time. And she had the willingness to take that course. She was not a math expert by any means, but she was willing to take it on to help her students. And there were only like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or maybe 10 of us selected to be in this program. And there were a lot of things she didn't know and couldn't figure out. And she would say to the community, to the group, to her students, to her grammar school kids, she would say, can anybody figure this out? Here's what I can figure out of it. Can you figure out any more? And we together try to figure out. It was such a good learning experience for us. And what happened for me was, then I went to high school, and because I took Math 9, I was ahead in math. I don't think of myself as a left brain person. I'm much more artistic and a right brain person. But I was doing this math work a little advanced, and as a result, in my senior year of high school, I got to take what was called Advanced Placement, or AP Calculus, which was a college level course for which you could get college credit. And I did that, and I completed it. And then I went to NYU. And I went for drama and theater studies, and I learned everything I could learn there. I got very active and very involved in shows and professional internships with John Houseman's acting company and all kinds of wonderful places. I started directing shows, and all of these wonderful opportunities took up a lot of time, and I ended up having to drop a class somewhere, I think in my senior year. And then it suddenly became obvious somewhere with one of my advisors that I actually would not have enough credits to graduate. I would actually have to take another course or repeat. I would not be able to graduate, and that was so terrifying to me. And then there was this moment of, oh wait, you took Math 9, so you took AP Calculus, and those credits haven't been counted in yet. So that's the 4 credits you need, so you have enough credits and now you can graduate, including having done all of the work I had done in my 4 years of college, professionally and outside of classes. So I had such a rich educational experience in college. And then at the last minute, I was able to get the credits I needed to graduate because this formidable, tough Irish Catholic nun had the willingness to try something new way out of her comfort zone. And because she had the willingness to do that, I could graduate and have my career in the theater. Seems totally unrelated. But when we have the willingness to do something for others, to do something for ourselves, to try something new, to expand outside of our comfort zone, we can help so many people. It's like dropping a pebble in the water and just those concentric circles which go out into infinity. We don't even know who it will reach, who it will help, or how it will affect people and the world. It's such a wonderful gift, New paradigm, this new paradigm I keep talking about that we're heading toward. The world is reinventing itself. We are on the cusp of a new world, and I think it's a really positive and really wonderful thing. In this new paradigm, I think take the job becomes important. Actors often say to me, I don't know, do I take this job? I just got offered this job. It's this play down at Virginia Stage. It pays decently. It doesn't pay a lot. It's not a Broadway show. I just feel like maybe I need to stay in town because there's something bigger for me. And I say, great, so find that out. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'll say, well, find it out. If you think there's something bigger for you that's worth staying in town for, let's find out if it's there. So, let's say it's May, and let's say that we're talking about this show is going to start rehearsals at the end of August. So you have a little bit of time. I mean, if it's starting at the end of August and it's only May, you probably have a month or 6 weeks through which you wouldn't need to sign your contract right away, and you could probably explore a little more. And if you end up booking a job that's a major film or TV series or a Broadway show, there's nobody at a regional theater who's going to think you're a terrible person for taking that job, especially if you're giving them a full 2 months or so to find a replacement for you and you're not dropping out at the last minute. And most of us in the industry do understand that something with a salary that's going to be, I don't know, 4 times what we can pay, and that's going to be for a big career advancement, is a perfectly acceptable job to take. But if you're going to turn down our job because you have some fantasy in your head of, oh, I'm going to stay in town and get something better eventually, that's not something we're going to respect. So get your butt out of bed every single morning for the next 6 weeks. Get to auditions. Audition for every EPA and every ECC and every open call that you can get yourself into. Put yourself on tape for everything. Get yourself out there. Audition like crazy and see what it yields. And if you get a better job, that's great. And if you don't, then the universe is being clear with you. This is the right next thing. This is the right job for you. This is the next right thing in your life because it's the job that's available to you. And take it. Take the job. Say yes. Bring some yes energy to your own career. That job is not the final triumphant job you're ever going to have. That job is your next job, and it's the one that's available to you. And if you want to work in this business and you want to work as an actor and you want to work in the arts, say yes and take the job. If you have a better job, okay, have that discussion within a reasonable time so that you're not dropping out at the last minute and leaving a theater flat with their cast right before rehearsals. Don't do that to a professional organization when you're a professional. But if you have an ample amount of time and something better does come along and you can get it, that's a totally different story. Stop waiting for something else when the universe puts something right in front of you. You know, there's that story of the blonde woman. I don't know why it's a blonde woman. I don't know if that's discriminatory, but that's how I heard the story. And she's driving her car and she's like, God, please, please, God, let me win lotto. Please let me win lotto. Please, God, let me win lotto. And a voice finally comes down through the windshield at her and says, Ellen, work with me here. Buy a ticket. You know? Willingness to see that we're not too big to take the job that's available to us. I don't do that. Someone offers me a job, I take it. If they had another casting director turn it down and they come to me second, no problem. I'll take your sloppy seconds. I love to work. I love what I do. I do it really well. I'm really happy to do it. I don't need to know that I was the third choice or the fourth in line. I don't care. You're offering me a job? My answer is yes. Bring that yes energy. Humility. Willingness leads us to humility. I heard a great definition of humility recently, very recently. It was something to the effect of, humility is not thinking less of ourselves. Humility is thinking of ourselves less. And another really wonderful definition of humility, which I've held very close to myself for many years now, it goes, humility is an awareness of who we really are today and a willingness to become all that we can be. Powerful. Humility is powerful. Humility isn't humiliation. It isn't like, oh, it's a terrible thing. Humility is about being humble, about recognizing who we are, about recognizing what we can do above what we think of ourselves. It's powerful stuff. Get to the thing that needs to be done. It isn't about us. It's about what we're here to do. Willingness to see ourselves as loving. Willingness to see ourselves as lovable. Willingness to forgive anyone for anything. Willingness to forgive ourselves for everything. Do any of these ideas bring up resistance? Do any of them make you feel like, whoa, that lovable thing, that's, whoa, forgive myself. I don't know if I want to go there. Oh, forgive them? Oh, does any of that happen? Let's do a little exercise. Let's take a moment, clear your mind, take a deep breath. Just get in touch with your breathing, see what it's like. Deepen it, relax, and clear your mind. Let it be a blank canvas. Sunday in the Park with George. A blank canvas. So many possibilities. Let your mind be a blank canvas and just think of something that happened recently that made you uncomfortable. Something that brought up some feelings where you maybe didn't behave as well as you might ideally have liked to. Something that was maybe a skirmish of some kind with your partner, or something professionally where you just didn't handle it well or didn't prepare well, or something in the world that just made you so angry and you lashed out at someone, perhaps misdirected anger or inappropriately in some way. Whatever the situation is, something that was not so skillfully handled as you would ideally have liked. And just sit with this for a moment. No doubt it feels uncomfortable. Allow it to feel uncomfortable. And just be present in the uncomfortableness of it. And what do we discover? We discover that when we're not acting out, when we're not trying to act our way out of our feelings and just reaching for alcohol or a cigarette or some food that gives us comfort and suppresses our feelings, whether it's sugar or white flour or carbs or whatever the thing is that's our kind of comfort go-to. If we're not overeating or overindulging, if we're not having indiscriminate sex or smoking pot or doing whatever else people may do to act their way out of their feelings, to suppress their feelings, to not feel, to anesthetize those feelings in some way. If we're not getting into a substance or getting into a thing that's helping us to suppress what we're feeling, and we just be present in the feeling, what starts to happen? We start to notice there's space. There's space for our uncomfortableness. We start to observe it. There's a possibility to explore it, to notice, oh, I'm feeling that. And kind of like with meditation, where we observe our thoughts, and then we recognize, okay, well, if those are my thoughts, then who am I? Who is the person who is thinking the thoughts? If I am not my thoughts, then who am I? Similarly, if I am not my feelings, if I am not this uncomfortableness, then who am I? And we start to understand that the who that I am is not my thoughts or my feelings. Those are things that I have. And we can observe it and say, wow, look at what I'm capable of. Look at the possible feelings I can have across the spectrum. My capability of love, my capability of sadness, anger, turmoil, my capability of altruism, of beauty, my capability of kindness, my capability of anger and speaking out. All of these things that make up who we are as a human being, they are all extraordinary, and we can observe our extraordinariness in that. We can be curious. Willingness allows for curiosity. It allows for us to look at that and say, isn't that interesting? I'm having those feelings. Isn't that interesting that this brought up such a strong reaction? Isn't that, I'm curious about that. What did that affect in me that made me react that way? That curiosity is so powerful for an artist, for any person really, for a creative person, for any person. I think we're all creative in some way or another, but yeah, it's powerful, that curiosity, and we can look at it. And we can also separate ourselves from our feeling and choose our action. We don't have to take the action we feel. Believe me, I work as a casting director. In show business, the people I've auditioned and been behind the table with over time, some of them are the greatest people I've ever worked with, and it's been an absolute honor to be with them. Some famous people and some unknown people to you are wonderful. There are also some people I've been behind the table with who are a bit unskillful, who sometimes say things or behave in ways that are not appropriate. And then, unfortunately, the onus falls on the casting director to direct the casting and to say, that's not acceptable. We have to pull that back a bit, please. And that's tricky. But it's about having the courage to do that when it's necessary. And it's about recognizing that we can, when we're interacting with people, feelings come up. And sometimes the feeling is, oh my God, I want to murder you. It doesn't mean you have to take the action of murdering someone. You can feel that without doing it. And so when we allow space for our uncomfortable feelings, our anger, our hurt, our sadness, our confusion, we allow the space, we explore, we can be curious about it, and we can choose our action. And suddenly we're so empowered to realize, I can choose my action. There's suddenly the difference between I am a mistake and I made a mistake becomes clear, and we are empowered. I made a mistake in how I dealt with this unskillfully. That doesn't mean I am a mistake. And so ultimately, the willingness, the humility, the curiosity, the way it leads is to a place of understanding and self-appreciation and ultimately freedom. Willingness is magic. Willingness to help others, willingness to try, willingness to put yourself on tape for an audition, willingness to get up at 4 a.m. and get back in line for an audition, willingness to do the work, willingness to work hard, willingness to pause and stay at home if that's what we're being asked and if it will help other people, willingness to look foolish, willingness to feed the hungry, whatever form that might take when we see a person in need, willingness to embrace our own uniqueness, willingness to forgive, willingness to offer ourselves to another, willingness to let go. These things lead to acceptance, to courage, often to jobs, to a more loving and peaceful life. So are we somewhat willing, mostly willing, a little bit willing, entirely willing? Entirely willing. This is Arnold Mangioli for Grateful, Ready, Open, Willing. We'll see you again.